The war in Ukraine has changed the world. And now we need to think about where this world is moving to, together. That's why MIM Business School is launching the nationwide educational project Reinforce UA, where the world's greatest minds will share their ideas and insights. And you will get their experience, change your perspective, and discover what changes should the business be ready for, before and after the victory. Every week on reinforceua.com.
Good afternoon, dear friends. We are starting our 40th meeting. The 40th meeting is part of the project Reinforce UA. Today, we'll be talking to the chairman of the supervisory board of the MIM Kyiv, the owner of MIM Kyiv, Vitaliy Gayduk. I am Irina Tikhomirova, the president of MIM Kyiv. And we are summing up the first stage of our project. Vitaliy Anatolievich, let's sum up the project. What could you say? Good afternoon, dear friends, dear colleagues. I thank Irina for inviting me and for this honorable mission to sum up not just the first stage, it's part of it. The first part was before pandemic, the forum that we had, and we considered the issues like the fourth industrial revolution, the issues different. It was a fantastic forum, but pandemic violated the schedule. And during the war, we launched a project which would allow our listeners the inspiration and would help them in self-education, would provide the intellectual support so that they have some ideas that could be used for restoration of Ukraine after the war. I don't think, well, I believe that we managed to do that. We had outstanding speakers, 39 of them. More than 80% of them are part of the rating 50 best intellectuals of the world. And they were providing, they were delivering fantastic lectures to the our alumni and those who study at MIM Kyiv. Everything was absolutely exciting. Our partners were different business associations, associations of business education. The participants were more than 11,500 persons from 58 countries of the world. We managed to raise in the program of support of temporarily displaced women, practically 20,000 euros. And undoubtedly, this part was the part that everyone liked, and we all want to see the continuation of that. And at this stage, I would sum it up this way. Thank you, Mr. Vitaliy. And now the main objective of the project was discussing the main topics, what the world, which global agenda we have. And my question to you is, what do you believe? What the world lives for? And with, well, taking into account the fact that the pandemic changed a lot in our approaches, but different analysis that we have access to demonstrate that out of the global risks that existed, nothing has changed. You know, we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which were adopted by the UN in 2015. They are very powerful. There are the targeted programs they operate, and everything's progressing there. But if we take, for example, the report of the World Economic Forum for 2022, then they believe that the main risks are related to climate threats. And in 10 years perspective, that's extreme weather, the loss of biodiversity, the shortage of political and economic will in the sphere of combating climate changes, and among short-term and medium-term threats are technological or man-made risks, issues of cybersecurity, the social inequalities of importance, the loss of revenues, the worsening of the situation with mental health. They also believe that renewal of the economy that happened after pandemic would have a very volatile nature. If we take the UNESCO analysis, which they made from the point of view of what people believe. So they had a big survey, and 67% said that the priority threat is the global warming. The second one is conflicts and violence. The third is discrimination and inequality. The fourth, lack of water and food, and also accommodation. And to my surprise, after all these issues, most said that the good education should be in place. Now, a serious issue is the issue of poverty. The analysis of the UN Development Program, which gives the index of the poverty, where they have the profiles of poverty and that were before the pandemic, and 553 million people lived without electricity or fuel for cooking food. 430 million people have no access to potable water. 374 million are deprived of everything at the same time. If we take regular indicators of poverty, people who live for less than $1.99 per day, 1.2 billion people are in such conditions. 50% of them are children who are younger than 18, and also pandemic had a very serious consequences. According to the Children's Fund of UN, 100 million children did not learn how to read during pandemic. And as of this year, we have 585 million children who cannot read. That is, these are awful figures that we see. And the issue of inequality, of overcoming inequality is in the agenda of not just international institutions, but scientists, researchers. That's why there are many scientific trends, like there was a question, it was an issue of physics, where some economic phenomena which could not be explained using normal formula, they are trying to explain from the point of view of physical processes, thermodynamics, also econometric, it becomes very important. The world is looking for not just is not just registering numbers, but the world is looking for ways how to overcome that. And you know, there was a famous program, there was such an issue. They believe that poverty may be at the genetic level, and they were even making research of the twins, and they try to understand whether that's a genetic thing, the poverty, but the results show that everyone is born equal. But those who are in difficult conditions, they have no access to water, to electricity, to normal food, they cannot read. Then, of course, it's very difficult for them to come out of this layer of poverty. And that is what is in the agenda today. Besides, there's a serious issue. People are concerned with the nuclear disaster. We are back to 1960s now, to times of Cold War, where that was an issue of the agenda. Why it is again the issue on the agenda, we know what the reason is. So the world lives understanding these global things, a little changed from the point of view of these global things, but in every specific case, in any country, different priorities change. That's how I would react to that. Thank you. And what about a global view of the world? There is an agenda. And the question is, fighting the poverty and inequality. We believe that that's not our agenda, because our agenda is war and victory. Please tell us, what do you believe? Where's the place of Ukraine in this global agenda? Well, Ukraine, back in 2019, the president issued an order. We joined all the initiatives, different UN programs, and Ukraine in many issues has been working for about 30 years on fighting the conflicts, and our peacekeepers participated practically in all conflicts. And now the situation is absolutely different. And we are concerned with other problems. First of all, it's ending the war, and ending the war by victory, because otherwise the society doesn't perceive it. Then the second one is ecological safety, radioactive pollution, man-made disasters. 2 days ago, we have this eco disaster, the blowing of Kakhovka hydropower plant. More than 80 settlements will be flooded, and 3 regions of Ukraine will have no water for watering the agricultural lands. We will have the desert on the right bank of the Dnipro, and then there was a problem of having access to potable water. Another thing, Center EcoDia made the preliminary analysis of how war impacts the pollution of soil. In Donbass, where the war started back in 2014, we had the increase of the lead background, and it's much higher than the norms, like 4 times higher. Now the analysis says that the pollution by lead is 35 up to 35% higher. Then also copper, cadmium also pollute, also where the military equipment was burning, that had a big impact. Also shelling from grenade launchers had an impact, where when the water gets into the hole where the shell exploded, then the water becomes polluted. Basically, 4,000 liters of gas with heavy metals we received from the explosion of one shell. The experience of many countries like Kosovo, we don't take Syria because they have sent their Kosovo, Balkans, Swiss military test fields, German military test fields. They show that restoration of such environment, it's not just that the fact that it will be very expensive, but it will be very lengthy in time, and there will be territories which will not be then good for living for maybe 100 150 years. In France, there's some place where for 700 years people will not be able to live after the World War II, and that's the disaster that we do not really assess. We'll do that after the war is over, but the next thing that is of concern is the issue of lack of energy resources. We survived the very difficult winter where we had problems with the electricity heating. The next thing is housing and work that our people are concerned with. And these are not just all the problems which concern people. That is what is in the agenda. Also the issue of education and so on and so forth. Everything that people have in the world, we have, but in more acute form. If we say those, you mentioned ecology, fighting poverty, but on the other hand, for us, it's very important, and we are talking about that a lot, how to win the war and not to lose the country. What should be done for that? What should be the agreement between who and who? How could it be executed? What should be done? In fact, we have many challenges ahead, and I believe that all of you are concerned with the recovery. We will win, there's no doubt in that, but how do we restore the country? It should start, when should it start? And you know, there were many conferences. There was Lugano, Berlin, the conference in Paris, and the next conference will be in London, a big conference where our government officials and our experts consider different opportunities. But unfortunately, the society doesn't participate in it now. But that is the unique situation, and to build the country from the scratch, to open a new project, Ukraine. And we have to tell ourselves which school we want to have, which hospital we want to have, what the houses we would like to have, because that is what we have to do today, to adopt certain standards, to change some construction norms and rules, to describe which materials will be used. The business now should be ready for that. We will not have so many opportunities after the war ends. I believe it will be a year or 2 years when we have to do it, and we need to be ready for that. And business today, the society today, should start talking between themselves, with one another, so that they create this public agreement, without which a new project Ukraine will not be possible. If we do not do that, we will maybe just restore some housing, we will do something, and the situation will get worse. We are losing infrastructure, and we cannot build the old type infrastructure. This should be new energy sector, new grids. A lot has to be changed. And we will have to do all that. And that is where our work was directed to from the point of view of the first stage, and then we need to move to the second stage. The thinkers, the intellectuals, they did what they could, they gave us their vision, their thoughts. Now we have to sit at a round tables, at conferences, discuss that, and also develop some program and offer it to the authorities. So you believe that this agreement will be a wide platform for discussing current issues and issues of how we will live further on and what our country means. Of course, let's take an example. Education, for example. We were quite closed before from the point of view of what's happening in school, how this is happening, how children study. But then pandemic gave us different opportunity. When we switched to online education, we could see what is the essence of the education at home. You can see what the teacher teaches, what are innovations, what are approaches. And then because of this disaster, 4 or 5 million of people with children went abroad, and children were studying there, and we received the access to education in those countries. Maybe some things we liked, some we didn't, but we have a wider vision now. And then this is this public agreement on which school we would like to see. That's the agreement between the society and the state. The school is supported by taxes, and the teacher cannot impose some situation from himself or herself. It's like in Germany. They say when you are on a train, someone will ask you not for a ticket, but they will ask you, why are you traveling with the child? The child should be at school now. And we have many things like that, and we have certain experience. We can look now wider at all these problems. And then the country of dream. Which country we have to build? What is for you the country of dream? Our Ukraine. Well, this could be, we could have different personal views on that because of our age, experience, and so on. Definitely, we would like to have free country, country which would have the rule of justice, the access to resources, so that people have, we are not using a lot this notion of the quality of life. It includes many things, and we would like the quality of life to improve, including the salaries, jobs, and so on and so forth, and the conditions of living, not just in cities, but in villages as well. And undoubtedly, that's the case. But I'm more interested in which country young people want to see. And those who will give birth to children, will raise children, and those who want to be in this country. If you wanted to hear that from me, Irina, I wanted to hear from you. You know, here, you mentioned education a lot, and that's clear, because we are in MIM, we are in a business school, and that is what connects business, education, and future, because education is about the future. And then the question is how to teach, how to bring up, because education is bringing up, and with what to bring up. And when we are talking about bringing up, we mean environment, examples, personal examples, philosophy of life, that's clear. But I have maybe personal question to you, and the personal question, if I may. And this personal question is related to the fact that we are educated by books, and I know that you have a huge library of books. But I wonder what educates you, what brings you up, what are you reading now, what are you thinking about now? That's a complicated question. Once Ivan Marchuk was asked, what are you painting now? And he says, I cannot paint now. Now the condition is that I cannot read. What I mean, I cannot just take a book and read it from the beginning to the end. And that's why I read maybe 5 and 6 simultaneously. I have different books on my desk, depending on what concerns me today. One of them is what I was talking about. I want to learn more on econophysics, and one of our lectures wrote a fantastic book, Quantum Economy, and I know that he will participate in our forum. And I believe that to have a better discussion at the forum, we need to read about these discussions in quantum psychology that many people believe to be not a real pseudoscience, but quantum physics has a very complicated mathematical apparatus which does not allow simple economists to realize different relations. And these are also the models of econometry. So what I read, again, I read Black Council by Panteleimon Kulish again. That's the first historic novel, the events of 1663. When I read it, I have an impression that we had this Black Council for 30 years. Read it again. It's very topical today, so that we, not after the victory, like in those times, so that we do not find ourselves in the same situation. It's very important what and I believe this public agreement that is about the society which has to find consensus in itself. When then also Wilbur Smith, the African writer, he's it's like adventurous historical book. There's a lot of science fiction. And why science fiction? When you think about it, it's easier to manage scientific fiction than reality. In scientific fiction, you can change things, but in reality, you can change nothing. What else I would also mention? Today, for example, I took a book because that's all everything I have on the desk. I have it, but on Sunday I received the outstanding book by economist Yaroslav Romanchuk, and the book is New West, Ukrainian Dream. Yaroslav is a well-known economist. He is a bright representative of Austrian economic school. Liberal, he's liberal, and he is for liberal economy, and it's about what our business wants. Our business always wants more liberal conditions. And I even took this book here, brought this book here. It's Russian language version, but the day after tomorrow I will receive the Ukrainian language version. And that's a very interesting book. I advise you to read it. That's the analysis of our economic history for the previous 30 years. And what's unique, he gives the program of what to do in military economy or after the war economy, what could be the program of restoration of Ukraine. And I believe that is what our business will perceive very well. But these are not just economic problems. It's also the issue of education, what school should be, how it should be financed. It's about medicine, law, and so on and so forth. The whole set of issues. And I believe that we also should invite him to several roundtables and even to our future forum, because from what I read, I've been reading during the last 2 or 3 years, that is the work which could become the basis for this project of new Ukraine. And now I have several questions more. The first one, yes, you're welcome. In which niches Ukraine will be competitive after war? I'm talking about global markets. You know, we have to get integrated into the world. The situation is such that we have to come to agreement with countries about our place in this world, how they see that. You remember a lot was talked, there were many talks about Marshall Plan, and it was for Germany about agricultural future, but then it changed. There are many international companies that worked in Russia, they left Russia, but these are not private companies, not state-owned companies. And I don't think they will be just looking at how we become competitive to them. They would agree to that if we would do that for our own money, but we want to get assistance for or aid for restoration, so we shouldn't have the conflict of interests with them. But the question is that we have the opportunities now, taking into account the demography and all the circumstances for the industry to operate. The labor force is needed, but from what we have now, it will be quite limited. The workforce will be limited, and that's the ideology of the fourth industrial revolution, when the production will use not human work, but different machines. Agricultural sector, we are proud of what we have, but despite the fact that we are one of the largest exporters of grain, but talking about the wheat harvest, we are among 50 best in the world, and but we need to create the product with our own value added. There's no sense to sell wheat to Italy and then to buy spaghetti from them. So in agricultural sector, we need to conduct a different policy. I'm talking about food processing. This will allow us to attract many people for processing, and this way we can take our place and export potential berries, for example, but we need to have technology of processing them. And I'm talking, I'm not saying about what everyone's talking about, but we have outstanding IT specialists. That's true, but these outstanding IT specialists should create for us a new economy. One thing is when we export such type of a service, but in our country, we are sort of standing in line for some paper documents. We should have absolutely different situation. There are many sectors like that. And taking into account what I said before, if there is such situation with soil that we will have problems in agricultural sector, then we need to consider what alternative energy sources should be placed there, solar energy, wind energy. And this will allow us to receive other energy resources to satisfy our needs and also the European needs. And we will have the economy which will allow us to pay to the owners of land which cannot be used for agricultural purposes. Well, but there are some people who had profits from agriculture. And now we have either to nationalize this land or create conditions so that owners will get some benefit from it. The spheres where we could be competitive, there are many such spheres, but or such sectors. But the question is, if we continue to look only at raw material markets, then it will be the same that was happening to us previously. That's what I think. Vitaly Anatolievich, please tell us, if we are talking about people, many say that we will have, and we are showing that we are proud that we will have a very competent army and we will be able to export our well, like army managers, or maybe can we do that? Will our specialists be competitive? I can tell you, glory to our armed forces. We have unique armed forces as of today. It's not just from the point of view of motivation, of spirit. We have unique armed forces. If we take into account the fact that we received international aid, and that was different types of equipment from different countries, different philosophy is behind that. But our warriors learned it all in short period of time. They not just learned it, but they demonstrated that they apply all this equipment better than in the countries where it was manufactured. This is a unique experience. I wouldn't want us to export our military, our soldiers, but we need to take into account, like it was after the disaster, Chernobyl and PP. The foreigners created 5 or 6 laboratories that just stayed there for several years, and they were analyzing different things like soil, animals, the plants and everything. We didn't have resource for that, but they were doing such work. And the issue of philosophy is of importance. Besides, that's a unique experience of a new young team These are not just the generals of old Soviet times. This is different philosophy. These are people who understand that the army should be construed differently, and that the basis of the foundation of armed forces is the soldier, that who has to be uh, dressed, who has to get good food, and should receive all the services needed, like laundry and everything else. Then we have to protect him, and the army is built out of soldiers. Then, if the soldier is well protected, then we have to create all the technical means that would allow him to execute his function and remain alive. Can we say that the military and the managers who will come to business after the war, that they will be extremely competitive as managers in global markets? And this is our task, to help them to become such people. And the philosophy of people is such that not everyone could become a businessman. Even fewer can become successful businessmen. That's true. And undoubtedly, this is our task as a business school, as business environment, to give such a level of education, such a philosophy, that they can find themselves in new life. Many lost jobs, many lost their businesses. But another thing is, we need to think that besides everything else, we have so many wounded people, and these people are seriously wounded. And the task of the society, on the one hand, is to get them back to active life so that they don't feel themselves disabled. But our task is to offer to them such philosophy and such direction of education that they could become competitive as well. And I believe, we believe that they are the best, and we want them to be successful. But for that, we have to do something, because there's no good man who would do it for us. A very complicated question from the participant. During the last 4 years, Ukraine reduced its corruption rating, but the military, judges, and civil servants and politicians are involved in unprecedented corruption crimes. How can the society, organization, several persons counteract against that? And Katerina writes that I am as distressed by corruption as by the losses at the front line. That's what we were talking about a few minutes ago, how to win the war but not to lose the country. That is what we have to do. We have to create the model and create the draft or the project of new Ukraine. Corruption is the worst thing, and what is awful, that it's like an inseparable part of our managerial process. That is the state level corruption. If a civil servant of a different level has the right to say yes or no, whether I allow or not, if he or she has a chance to make decision which would be based on subjective evaluation, then he will always be tempted, or she will always be tempted to receive for some decision or some solution some remuneration. There are many different types of medicines. We shouldn't be fighting corruption, I can tell you. We should eliminate it if we correctly construct the model. In many countries, there are such models. I will give you an example of India, which Modi opened to every adult practically billion of accounts and put a couple of dollars there. And he said that all the incomes of all people should go to only to this account. And then the situation is like that. You cannot write it or register it for your grandmother or for your aunt. That's control of revenues. There are many systemic solutions for that. Political will is needed. And we understand that many of business, from business environment are happy with this situation. It's not about how much the corruption costs. Yeah, we can continue. It's not about how much the corruption costs and what profit they receive from such corruption model. And we understand that for many years we're saying that there's corruption at the customs, corruption with the VAT, because we have one of 5 most complicated tax systems in the world. We have fantastic VAT. When you export things, they repay to you. Till this model exists, we would always have this one-day existing companies or pseudo-export. If we want to resolve this problem, then everything should be simplified. That's one thing. Second, I don't understand why we have so many procedures of getting permits in our country. That is just unbelievable. We have an impression, I have such an impression, sorry. And thirdly, the individual entrepreneurship is very popular, but we need to understand that besides addressing this problem of self-employment, this model is used by big business in their own interests, and this doesn't allow brands to develop. There are many corruption issues which could be resolved. Plus to that, we should start from ourselves. We shouldn't be giving bribes in any cases. We need to start from ourselves. Now, a different question. Yes, we need to start from ourselves, but the different question is from Roman Romanov. The world is unstable. There are more and more problems all over the world. You mentioned that we are again faced with the nuclear threat. And the question is, how do you believe, is there a democracy in the world now? I didn't say that we are faced by the nuclear threat. I mentioned that the world is concerned with the problem of nuclear disaster. How close we are to that, I cannot tell you, and I don't want to guess, because we were thinking that we didn't believe that the war could start. There's no logic that in 21st century it could start, but Now we understand that everything is possible. So what Roman was asking about, is there a democracy in the world? Oh, yes, of course. Definitely, there is democracy in the world. And the models of the systems in the world are different, but they are all based on democratic foundations. I am not taking Arabic world or Asia, but if we look at all empires, powerful empires, where they had monarchs, they all became democratic. And even having monarch, they have more democracy than the countries where they don't have monarchy. The democracy is something to which we need to go, but it's always difficult to go there. And secondly, without consensus, it's very difficult to construct some democratic system. That's what I believe. I'm not oracle. I'm not one of those fantastic thinkers who were participating in our webinars, but I believe that is the case. You know, with Mr. Vitaliy, it looks like I believe that those thinkers that spoke before, for them it was easier because everyone was talking just about one topic. But the questions to you are from me, from our participants, and these are the questions from corruption to future and the philosophy question about democracy. And one more, Dmitro Shevchuk says, greetings from Ostroshka Academy. Which sectors of economy should become priority ones for Ukraine? And what should the educational institutions do for that, and for veterans and people who were displaced? How should the universities react to the current agenda? Universities, business schools. Now, you need to like competition, because competition is a driver of the progress. Without competition, nothing will happen. The business will try to go to monopoly because it's easier this way. And we know that there's a famous book, the strategy, the Blue Ocean Strategy. It says that the whole world is red from competitive struggle, but when you create the product with a different value, some technical one, then you get to blue ocean where you have no competition. And this is a brief period of time when you enjoy the monopoly, but that's monopoly for something new. But several moments later, something else appears and you are again in competitive environment. For me, any sector of economy where we can become competitive, it should exist. We will fail to do anything if we are trying to implement some regimes of privileges. That's temporary thing. We will not be able to compete with that. As to the second question on veterans, could you please repeat it? I didn't put it down. What should universities and business schools do? Which courses, which programs for veterans and displaced people should prepare? The veterans, what is meant by the veterans? Veterans of war. You know, the word veteran of war, I perceive it like for myself. I believe these are the citizens of Ukraine, and if they had some problems, we need to help them find their place in the environment, and especially because they have already finished their mission, the mission of the defense, and then the society should do it. I support the project, you know. There is such a project, Superhumans, that was launched by Andriy Stavnitzer in Lviv, and they create the Center of Rehabilitation, and that's a private one. They're not just creating the center, they're trying to bring all famous laboratories which are making prostheses and the surgeries. They are trying to bring them to Ukraine. We have an experience when we were financing something. Some people were going to the US for surgery, and the person has to go back once or twice a year. But this is the project which I do not just support because it's technical, but it restores, rehabilitates the person mentally and physically. And if every university, especially, I love Ostrożska Academy. With the Ostrożska Academy, we've been partners from 2008. And they always have an opportunity not to impose, but to offer the menu which is needed for different people, because everyone has own possibilities. The countries, different countries have a lot of experience in that. We cannot copy them, but we first have to examine that, whether that is something good for us. But everything's possible. As to business schools, yes, we opened the charity foundation, manage the future. We are supporting the armed forces, and we will also give grants to those people who need education, who, because of different circumstances, cannot afford it. Thank you, Vitaly Anatolievich. We've been working for an hour. That's more than just academic hour, it's astronomic hour. And I believe for you, it wasn't a simple hour, because all these questions were absolutely different. And that just proves that such meetings with you should become more frequent. And you, as the owner of MIM, as the chairman of the supervisory board, well, we mentioned the necessity of wide discussion, the discussion of this public agreement, about the discussion how to win the war but not to lose Ukraine. And I believe once we are completing this stage of weekly lectures and we are moving to the stage of roundtables, I honestly hope that you will participate in these meetings with our business community, and such meetings will become regular. Good, and thank you, Irina. We have no other way out. Me, as the owner and the chairman of the supervisory school, and you as the president of the business school, we have to answer all these questions, because we are not just lecturers who teach some discipline, but our school gives to people the knowledge which should improve their lives. And the life, it's not just a lecture, specific lecture. And that's why we need to provide answers to all the questions. And I will be trying to participate maximum in these roundtables, and maybe so that I am not tempted, but I will basically chair one of them. Then this will be a duty for me if there is such a need, and if we can give our students and listeners something rational, then I believe we should do it. That's the mission that is important. If we do not move forward, then there will be no project of the new Ukraine. Thank you for attention. I thank you. I would like to say that our project, Reinforce UA, is not over. We are saying that there will be roundtables, and on the 6th of October, I hope nothing will hamper that, but we will have the forum, outstanding forum, where we will have the speakers, many of those who were delivering lectures here, and we will have a chance to, in more detail, discuss different problems. And it will be about digital Jesus and about precariat. And we'll talk about basic revenue or the basic income. Everyone, pandemic showed that that's the instrument which gives an answer on how to support people at a time when they do not work, and it's not just because they don't want to. And we need to work a lot. We need to publish the book with all the lectures of all our thinkers and our lecturers. And this should be in 2 languages, in Ukrainian and English. For that, we need to have many roundtables, especially because it's summertime now, and we have a lot of work, so that in autumn we will have a good understanding ourselves, and our students will also join us. And in autumn, we will start the program for temporary displaced women who want to learn more about entrepreneurship. I hope it will be successful again. Well, I have no doubts in that. I would like to thank all the participants who joined us today. The recording will be available on the website. I would like to thank Vitaliy Gayduk for today's discussion, and I remember his promise to be our guest during next meetings. And also I would like to thank participants and organizations that supported our project, 3 associations, AACSB, AMBA, EFMD, and the Bogdan Gavrilishin Family Foundation that supported this project. We had 40 meetings with top intellectuals of the world. We were discussing important issues of the global agenda. Thank you all, and I hope to see you on the 6th of October offline in Intercontinental.
The war in Ukraine has changed the world, and now we need to think about where this world is moving to, together. That's why MIM Business School is launching the nationwide educational project Reinforce UA, where the world's greatest minds will share their ideas and insights. And you will get their experience, change your perspective, and discover what changes should the business be ready for, before and after the victory. Every week on reinforceua.com.